doing? No. You got to do it. One last time for me, man. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone. But when I see you hanging about with anyone, it's not unusual to see me cry all the time. It's not unusual to go out of time. But when I see you out of town, it's such a crime. If you should ever want to be loved by anyone, it's not unusual.
All right, what's good, y'all? Thought I'd start it out. Thought that would be fitting. It's nice to be back. Had a wonderful time at CPAC, and I just found that video, so I figured I had to open with it. I mean, that dance is just iconic, especially with all that. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, sorry I'm a little late. I was having some technical difficulties, but yeah. So today we're going to talk about that fire panel. Everybody's been talking about it. Some are a little mad at it. That's okay. This is politics, but there was some stuff that needed to be said, so I'm going to be talking about it. So a few things before I get started. And actually, I'll just address right before I even get started. Let's start off by not calling people Carlton. That's obviously calling someone lame, and y'all can't insult people and then turn around and try to work with them, even if there is good intention. Let's have a better analogy. Okay, so I plan to change your mind on that by the end of this recording. I think people are taking this in a way that it really wasn't meant to be taken. So I think I'm the perfect person to discuss this and why the analogy is okay and it's not as offensive as it might come across as. But before I get started, I'm going to let you know I didn't get to do the recordings at CPAC that I wanted to do because there was just too much going on, too much writing to do, too much socializing, and I was beat every single day. But I am going to do a video on my thoughts on this event on CPAC, and so I'm going to be talking about what I think of it, what I think is going to come of it. But this video will only be available on my locals.com community. So you have to be a subscriber in order to see my thoughts on this. I'll be doing a lot more videos on other topics. I'll be doing more writing. It'll be a lot more interactive. I'll be hosting live chats. So if you want to take part in that, then all you got to do is just sign up on my locals.com community. The link is in the notes here. And it's only $5 a month. Like I always say, you spend more on a Starbucks than that. So help a brother out, help out your favorite content creator. And this leads me to the next thing. I had one of my members of my audience come up with a novel idea. I hate him for it, but it worked. He so he went ahead and supported me, gave a one-time donation, one of those links, and there's others in the show notes. He gave me $10 and said that in exchange for that, I have to use a specialized background made by him for 10 minutes. So I figured, okay, and I kind of knew what he was going to do, but I was like, oh, whatever. So I'm going to be using his background on this show for 10 minutes. So let me bring it up right now. And if you guys want to do the same thing, I guess based on that, it's going to be $1 a minute. The longer you want me to have a background that you create specifically for me, other than this one right here, well, got to pony up a little bit. So let me grab it really quick. And shout out to Mr. Hackett for this, Anthony Hackett, who was a real bastard. Look, let's see. You see what he did to me? You see this background? Is it on? Yeah, it is. So he's got all the people, all of my heroes here. I mean, we've got Jesse Lee Peterson, we've got Candace Owens, Jesse Lee Peterson, Brandon Tatum, this guy. That's Matt Walsh. I didn't even notice that at first. Yeah, so we've got that guy. We've got some Charlie Kirk. We've got some Bryce in here. She only got one picture, but I think she probably deserved to have more than one. But I guess this guy really wanted to get at me with Brandon Tatum. We've got Candace Owens. Again, another Charlie Kirk up here. So let me move out of the way. Oh, he put Brandon Tatum right in the middle. See, y'all are wrong. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna put the timer on right now for 10 minutes so I can take this crap off once I'm done with it. Just bear with me. You have to have some sympathy here because I can't do this. But it does figure into what we're talking about. So the guy was on point. Set timer for 10 minutes. There we go. All right. So once that thing rings, I'm going to pause a little bit. So first thing I want to do, again, and also be sure to subscribe, share this video. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. It helps me a lot. So let's see. Got some chats here already. Welcome back from Florida and congratulations for Abbott lifting the mask mandate. Yep, I am grateful for that. That's a dope shirt. Thank you. I love it. This is one of my favorites. And I knew JLP will be on there. You know, it's funny because I don't have as much of a problem with JLP as I do with the others, and I should because he says the worst things. He says stuff that is worse than what the others have said. But I guess I don't take him all that seriously. So maybe I just don't focus on him that much. But okay, let me get myself situated here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about that panel at CPAC. I'm going to give my full thoughts on the full event on my locals.com community. But for this one's a little bit too important. I want to really discuss what happened here. And what I'll start out by saying that just the fact that they have Maj Toure on there and they allowed him to do his own panel with people that he picked, I think that already shows a willingness on the part of the conservative movement to hear different views from the Black conservative community. Black conservatives are not a monolith, but I think that a lot of people have been led to believe that because they've only seen one type of Black conservatives. And I'll talk about that a little later, but this has been an issue for decades. It didn't just start here. And I think that it's a really good thing that they're more willing to hear from people who frankly don't toe the party line, who aren't afraid to challenge the Republican Party. We used to have this, by the way, back in the day before a lot of us were born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, we had Black people in the party who were willing to call them out when they felt that they weren't doing their best to reach the Black community. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play some excerpts from the panel. It wasn't that long, but I'll get to that later. And before I start this, a lot of people were complaining about the length, including myself. It was only about 30 minutes or so, but that was pretty much as long as every other panel that was at the event. So, I think it's different from what they've done in past years, because in past years, when I watched videos, they've had panels that were 45 minutes to an hour. It just seemed like they wanted to shove a lot of things into a short amount of time, but you can't really dig into the substance that way. So I don't think that this was a case of them discriminating against Maj's panel. I think that this is just the way they had it set up. So I'm going to get the video queued up here. And and I'm not going to do the entire panel. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Let me go ahead and get you guys on that screen. Why is it doing that? Okay. That's fine. Okay.
Y'all can do a lot better than that. There we go. That's about right. That's right. Okay. So we're going to get right to it. So for the people at home and the people that can't see, there's a screen right here that tells us exactly how much time we get to tell you some truths that are going to make you very uncomfortable. How many people have been in CPAC before? Okay. This is the awkward part. And this is the growing pains part for the conservative movement, okay? It's called Growing Pains, not growing chill or growing safe space. Okay? This panel is going to deal with the issues on how we as conservatives failed engaging the Black community and galvanizing that community, and it cost us an election. So we're going to get into these questions. We're going to get straight forward, okay? First and foremost, I want to direct this question to Angela. They have no idea who I'm going to answer or send these questions to at all. It's in my phone. First, light one, Angela.
Yes.
What does conservative thought and ideology mean to you?
Wow. So for me personally, well, first what I want to say is I want to thank you for using, this wasn't a panel in the beginning. This was your shot for you to be on stage, but you decided that you wanted to open up this space for all of us to come on here. And I think that that's very courageous of you to share this time with us. And this is what we need in the Republican Party. We need to be highlighting all of the minority voices that are standing for conservatism. Absolutely. For me personally, conservatism is my beliefs. It's where I stand. It's my moral code. It's everything that I stand on and what I believe. And that's what conservatism is to me. And I think that, you know, regardless of our religions, regardless of our skin colors, regardless of our cultures, there are some things that bring us together on common ground. And, you know, that's freedom of speech. We want to make sure that we're protecting the innocence of our children. We want freedom of religion. There are just some things that bring us together as conservatives.
So you
starting it out. And I think that was a perfect first question for Maj to ask. And first off, a shout out to Maj Toure for even doing this, because like Angela King said, I mean, this was supposed to be his venue here. I mean, he could have just used this for himself, but instead he used it to amplify other conservative voices. So I shout out to Maj Toure for that. But that was a perfect question to ask, because I think it was important to establish everybody's conservative credentials there. I mean, everybody on that stage is a staunch conservative. They believe in free speech. They believe in the Constitution. We have the same foundational principles as other conservatives as well. So I thought that was important, but I'm going to skip to where Sunny first starts, which is 4:45.
This is true or not, then we can move on, but we at least have to be able to address it. So right now, you guys may see out in the media a lot of people wanting to cancel me for addressing allegations of child abuse.
Wait, maybe I didn't have that right.
But we have to be able to engage with African Americans a little bit better in terms of how.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Adrian because he made some good points
too.
too.
We're talking about right now, one, does it translate into Black and brown communities? As well as, question, what is something you'd like to see change in that regard?
Wait, I'm sorry, I messed up, guys. Okay, yeah, there's Sunny.
Imaginary. If 5 years ago, this movement would have looked at Black men and said they are capitalists, if they had looked at Black men and said that they want to be the heads of their household, they want to be fathers to their children, they want to be coaches to their little league teams, if they had looked at Black men as something more than a conservative stereotype and talking point, we would not be here talking about the failure of the last 4 years when it comes to Black America.
Come on now, Sonny.
If we had looked at what holds us together as conservatives, so if you want to know what conservatism means, it means conservation of the idea of the individual, that each and every one of us has inherent gifts that we are meant to give this world, and that deserves to be protected, even in Black skin.
Come on now.
100%.
When we talk about the idea of the republic, That means that local government has the most power over the people. So when you tell me you're
I was just trying to get in there, and Sonny just ain't having it. She was going to say what she needed to say. But I mean, what she said here is crucial, right? I mean, the biggest issue over the past few decades is that the conservative movement has not looked at Black America as fellow Americans. I'll say it again. The conservative movement for the past few decades has not looked at Black people as fellow Americans. They've looked at us as a specific stereotype or a set of stereotypes that are inaccurate. Now, remember, every stereotype has an element of truth to it. So it's not that what people were saying didn't have level of truth, but at the end of the day, they're stereotypes and they don't tell an overall accurate narrative of who Black people are. So I talk a lot about the plantation narrative, the idea that Black people are mentally enslaved and mentally in bondage and love being on welfare and yada, 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 yada. That comes out of a misperception of the Black community, and it comes out of an approach that sees the Black person as a mental slave or sees somebody as somebody who just doesn't want to vote for Republicans. It ignores the fact that there are very distinct and valid reasons why Black people don't vote for Republicans in greater numbers. And what Sonny just touched on there is the exact reason why that happens. When you look at people a certain way, it influences the way you talk to them or talk about them in the case of the conservative movement, because they spend more time talking about the Black community than speaking to the Black community. And that's why I have a lot of the problems that I do with what I call Black Conservative Inc. A lot of people just talk about Candace Owens. She's just one of them. I mean, and the thing is, she didn't create this message. This is not her message. This was given to her. This has been passed down over the past few decades. There were people who were doing exactly what Candace Owens is doing now. And it's not just her. I mean, you see the people on my background, right? So this has been an issue that has gone on for decades on the right, in right-wing media, from right-wing politicians, from the pundits that they put up, most of them being Black faces that are designed to echo these talking points. And the moment that we stop doing this, and the moment that as a whole the conservative movement starts to come around to the idea that, you know, maybe we do need to do more to win over Black voters and not just at the presidential level, then we can finally start to make progress. Instead of seeing Black people as a stereotype, as welfare queens or as thugs or what have you, recognize that the Black community has a lot of foundational principles in common with conservatism. Stop being so afraid of it's hip hop. I mean, hip hop artists are some of the biggest capitalists out there. I mean, you got 50 Cent, you got Jay-Z. I mean, you got T.I. Maybe I shouldn't mention T.I. You've got Killer Mike. You've got a lot of well-known figures in the hip hop community who are capitalists. This is something that we have in common with them. But instead of focusing on areas where we have commonality, the conservative movement just decides to fall into talking points and stereotypes. And you know me, I blame a lot on the media. I mean, it's because a lot of conservatives, I mean, let's just be frank, most of the conservative movement are white people. And not all white people live in cities to be around Black people enough to know that these stereotypes are inaccurate. So they're fooled by the Black conservative establishment, Black Conservative Inc. And while we see a civil war on the right brewing right now, and that has really intensified since President Trump gave his speech at CPAC, you've got the establishment elites, you like your Mitt Romneys, your Liz Cheneys, against more of the rank and file non-establishment figures. But that's happening in the world of Black conservatism as well. And I know a lot of people don't like that there's a conflict, but I'm here for it. I mean, I'm not into, making personal attacks or things like that. Like, somebody really has to earn it for me to make a personal attack on them. But this conflict is needed, because through this type of debate, we become better. Like the saying goes, iron sharpens iron. Well, that's not always by agreeing with one another. Iron sharpens iron by rubbing up against each other. So that means that there is going to be some headbutting, and that's okay as long as it's kept within certain parameters. There are certain lines that I won't cross, that a lot of people won't cross as well. The debate needs to happen. It's been a long time coming, and the problem is that before we had alternative media, before we had YouTube, before we had Twitter and Facebook, you only saw this one type of conservative on Fox News or other conservative media outlets. So the impression is that this is what Black conservatives think. It gives that impression, but it's not true. So, I mean, there's a lot in there in what Sonny was saying. So let me move to the next clip here. 4:55. Okay, I'm going to turn this over. Bear with me, y'all. I'm still mastering this.
Conservatives.
Yes. That's right.
Told y'all. I told you. Shamika, with all of this being said, Democrats still currently have a death grip, all pun intended, okay? I want Shamika as well as Angela to deal with this. Have a death grip on youth and young adults. How have they been so successful in doing so? And what can we learn from it and apply to ourselves? Because they have been successful with that literal and figurative death grip on, Black and brown communities, especially with youth. How have they been able to do that? And how can we kind of right the ship in that regard?
I think they've been able to do that by being more inclusive. And I think that's something that we can learn in the conservative party. There's not just one type of Black conservative. And I feel like that's where we failed over the last 4 years. We propped up one type of Black conservative, and just because white people like them, it was like, oh yeah, we love her, oh gosh, she has her own thinking, oh yeah, woo. But that wasn't necessarily who Black, the Black people really identify with. And I like to kind of make this analogy. A lot of people are familiar with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. Okay, just say Carlton and Will were both conservatives. Carlton could go to Bel-Air and he could talk to the people of Bel-Air all day long, but you could not send Carlton to Philly to talk to those people. You would have had to send Will to talk to the people who had the same type of life experiences that Will had. Yeah. So when it comes to conservatives, being conservative, stop propping up Carlton Banks, thinking that Carlton is going to be the one to be able to communicate with the wheels of the conservative party. You're going to have to prop up the wheels so that they can speak the language that people understand and share experiences with. And I think that's how we fail. I feel like the Democrats do a very good job of making sure they have people that represent all around. And that's what we need to do better as conservatives. You can't take Carlton to Philly going, it's not unusual. No, that's not going to work.
And that was awesome.
Absolutely.
So I just kind of.
Oh, I love that. So funny story. Like I was in the media overflow room at CPAC. So I was watching this live on the screen. And there's a lot of other journalists in there, covering the event. And when she went into that routine, I laughed out loud. Now, to give you an idea, you're pretty quiet in that room because you don't want to overwhelm or shout out or silence what's going on the screen. But I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. And she is absolutely right. Now, a lot of people took offense at this. And yes, Aaron, I'm leaving the background up a little bit longer. I know you came in late, but whatever. I'll take it down when I get another break here. But but the thing is, people were taking offense at her analogy. But if you listen to what she was saying, she wasn't saying that there is no place for Carlton, but you have to put Will in there too. Now, you guys may or may not have noticed, but if I'm going to fall into one of these two buckets, I'm going to be, with my personality and the way I am, I'm more of a Carlton than a Will. Hey, I can say it. I lean into it. I am not ashamed. I love who I am. But obviously, you can hear the way I talk. I talk a certain way. And there are different types of Black people in this country. There are different types of Black Americans, ADOS, or what have you. Some of us are more Carltons. Some of us are more Wills. Now, I'm not saying that I grew up like Carlton. I would have loved that. I mean, I was, it wasn't like wealthy like that. But still, I mean, but I also didn't come from the hood either. And guess what? A lot of Black people don't live in the hood. Most Black people don't live in the hood, but a big chunk does. And that tends to be a lot of the Black people who need better solutions as far as government goes. So when she was saying that, she was just saying, don't send Carlton to Philly because he might not be able to relate to them in a way that Will could. But the problem is that in the conservative movement, like I said, they only prop up Carlton. Like people like myself, if I put on a blazer and a bow tie and I was willing to echo their talking points, I mean, I could be where the others are and where the others have been. But is that really going to bring more people over to the right? No, of course not. Especially if you're always bashing the Black community and you can't say a positive thing about Black culture. The thing about Carlton didn't do that. Carlton was pro-Black. He was a Black man and had no problem with being Black. So the analogy is more, yeah, I mean, Carlton's more the nerdy type, but I mean, the difference between him and some of the others that you might see in Black conservative ink, Carlton doesn't come off like he dislikes Black people. And I'm sorry, some of y'all aren't going to want to hear me say it, but people in Black conservative ink, they do come off that way. I'm not saying they do. I can't read minds, but I can read actions. And I can see why people think that Candace Owens does not like Black people. I can see why people think that Brandon Tatum does not like Black people. You can't say that Black culture is a joke and compare Black people to trained chimpanzees and expect to call yourself a Black leader or to call yourself trying to bring about this mass exodus of Black people from the Democrats to the Republicans. I mean, you can't talk trash about white women, in your videos and think that somehow that's going to endear you to the Black community. But at the end of the day, I think for some of these people, that's not the goal in the first place. The goal is to talk to white conservatives about the Black community, but not to actually do what they claim to be doing. And they're put forward to give the impression to white conservatives who want more Black people over on the right, to give the impression that the Republican Party actually gives a crap about the Black community, when in reality, they don't. So Shamika was dead on with that. She was spot on. I don't feel that she was trying to insult anybody. She was giving an analogy, and it's an analogy that makes a lot of sense. And, there were two people who weighed in on this who I thought made very excellent points. Pastor Daryl Scott chimed in and said, but to be effective as possible, you need to be able to be both. And by that, I don't think he meant, being someone different when you're talking to different people. I think he meant just being the type of person who can speak to both. And that's a good point. I mean, throughout my life, even though I've had Black friends who are more Will Smith. I have them right now. So you have to be able to talk to different people in different ways, but what turns Black people off to Black conservatism are Black conservatives who all they do is talk about the negative parts about Black culture, or will straight up lie and make it sound like Black culture is one way when it really isn't. So there's a lot of nuance that figures into this. And I think that when we realize that we need more different types of Black conservative thinkers on the right, I think things will change. So somebody else weighed in, and it was Sunny Johnson herself on Twitter saying, it's not just a matter of whether you're a Carlton or whether you're a Will Smith, but what about Uncle Phil? Uncle Phil is the one that we should focus on, because Uncle Phil raised both of them and loved them and supported them no matter what they did. That's what we need the conservative movement to be. We need to be more inclusive, like Shamika was saying. More inclusive means, like, we always pride ourselves on diversity of thought, but I don't think we have as much of it as we should. I mean, especially when it comes to these ideas. I mean, and this is a problem of the establishment and of the non-establishment. I mean, the whole MAGA crowd, they always say MAGA is non-establishment, which it is. But I'm sorry, when it comes to the Black community, MAGA and the establishment are in lockstep. The MAGA is as establishment as Mitt Romney and Jeb Bush and wrapped up in a tortilla. Like that's what it is. But I do think that if we're going to see the change, if we're going to see a paradigm shift in the zeitgeist on the right when it comes to the Black community, it probably will be from the MAGA non-establishment movement before the actual establishment elites, because they're the ones who created this whole narrative in the first place. So let me go ahead and go on here.
I want to piggyback off of what Shamika is saying. You know, the message is just as important as the message. You could have the right message, but the wrong messenger, and people won't get it. So one of the things that I say all the time, and people are like, "Oh God, Angela, you always say something to make people mad." Well, here's the thing: we got to face the truth, right? And the truth is that the Democratic Party is really good at playing identity politics. Republicans are not. We're just honest and straightforward, just like our president. We don't care how you take what we say, we're just going to give it to you. But here's the thing. In doing that, right, we have to remember that everybody just can't handle the blunt, honest truth. And there are some times that we're going to have to get in and we're going to have to stand before the people, and they're going to have to hear from somebody that they can relate to. So when you want to send a message out to single Black mothers that are struggling on welfare, that are trying to better their lives, then that's when you come get Angela Stanton King, somebody that was on welfare and got off welfare and got her life together and is now a business owner. I mean, you have to make sure that we are identity in our politics as well, because how can we relate if we're not related? And we don't have to be related by blood. We can be related by experience. Right. So what I want the conservative party to understand, because I myself, along with a lot of other people on this stage, have come up under a very, very huge attack, just like everybody else was standing with this party. And with that sacrifice, we need your support. Right. We need your support. We need your support.
Okay, so there was a lot in what Angela Stanton King just said there. I mean, and she dropped some bombs, stuff that we need to hear. The messenger is just important as the message. And here's the thing. I mean, as far as the people who are more of the Black conservative ink types, I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of what they say, but how you say something is just about or more important than what you're actually saying. The way they describe the Black community, I mean, is inaccurate a lot of times. It's deceptive and it's exaggerated, but they won't even speak to the Black community. And even when they do address Black issues, it's in a framing that is designed to make the Black community look a certain way. So here's the thing, when it comes to politics, if you're trying to win people over, I mean, you've got to have the policy, you've got to have the principles. The 3 Ps, I come to the 3 Ps, the policy, principles, but then the last one is what we always mess up on, and that's the persuasion. And when you're trying to persuade somebody, you can't persuade somebody by insulting them, right? You see me say that a lot. We will never be able to insult the Black community into voting Republican. I mean, that's not going to happen. If you own a business, I mean, I've used this analogy before. If I own a business and you own a business and we both sell the same thing and we're in the same town and I know how to sell better than you, even if my product is inferior to yours, I will put you out of business, especially if you're taking up a marketing campaign that insults people who don't buy from you, right? That's common sense, which is one of the reasons why I think this whole thing was set up to repel Black voters in the first place, because, I mean, nobody can actually think that this is going to help anything. But getting back to what Angela King was saying is we have to have the right messengers. And I think I see a lot of people saying, oh, why do you disagree? Why do you criticize Candace Owens? Or why do you criticize such and such? Why, Jeff, why are you always talking about Black conservatives? Well, because, why don't you work together? Well, on a certain level, I mean, I can work with pretty much anybody. But if you're on a team, let's say you've got 5 people on a basketball team, and one of them continuously makes it harder for the rest of the players to do their jobs on the court, then there's going to be a conversation about that, right? I mean, there's going to be like, what are you doing wrong? Why is this happening? Why is it that every time I pass the ball to you, you miss it and it goes to the other team? Why can't you ever get any rebounds? Or, you're going to focus on what this performer is doing that is holding back the rest of the team. And any Black conservative like myself will tell you that the message that a lot of these folks bring to the table makes it harder for us to say, hey, come over and join the Republican Party, or at least be part of the conservative movement, or at least be open to voting Republican. I can't tell them that when I know what they're going to be met with when they get over here, which is why I focus mostly on turning the conservative movement into a product that I can actually sell. I mean, the Democrats get this right. And I saw some people, who are a little iffy about Angela's saying that we should use identity politics. I agree 100%. First off, we're already using identity politics. So any conservative who tells you that they don't like identity politics is lying. Now, they're lying to themselves. I don't think they're being willfully deceptive towards you, but it's not true. I mean, we have Black Republicans groups in the party. I mean, we've got a director of Black outreach. We're playing identity politics. We're just not playing it very well. We suck at it. I mean, because we spend so much time pretending that we don't like identity politics. And then once a police officer shoots a Black man, we're talking about Black on Black crime. So we do talk about race all the time, where we are not colorblind. So we should stop pretending to be so. We need to play identity politics better than the left. And you know what? The Republican Party used to have no problem with identity politics. They had no problem with passing programs that were specifically designed to help Black people catch up to whites because of the laws that were in the past that gave us less of a head start. So the Republican Party was not always against it. And it's really not against it now. It just plays it very ineffectively. It's okay to say, this is what a Republican candidate will do for your city as mayor if you elect him. They say, well, government shouldn't be doing anything. Black people should be doing it themselves. No, you're missing the point. I mean, if that's the case, then why do we have a Republican Party? Let's just let the Democrats win all the time. We shouldn't run candidates who are part of government because we shouldn't be having an influence on that, because people should just be doing for themselves. No. Are you telling me that a Republican mayor or a Republican governor or what have you can't get into office and say push for school choice? Are you saying that a Republican or a conservative cannot get into office and lower taxes and lift regulations that make it harder for Black business owners to succeed? Well, I would say that that's doing something for the Black community. Like that. So the problem is that when you hear people say things like, what can a Republican do for the Black community? They automatically think, oh, he's talking about welfare or free programs. No, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So don't buy into the left's narrative that doing something for a Black person means having to create a government program just to throw free money at them. That's not what's going on here. So I'm going to keep going here. Actually, before I go on, I'm going to take a look at these chats here because I know y'all have been chatting it up. Go back up here. Okay. You have to bring awareness to problems to grow. I am sure there are a lot of people that shy away from conservatism due to the perception and not the potential due to the lack of outreach. Yeah, I mean, and you know how most Black people see the Republican Party. And, they see him as racist. Now, some of that is earned and some of it isn't. Some of that is just the fact that Republicans don't bother to talk to Black people to even let them know that they're not racist. And the fact that they're so silent lends to that narrative, right? So let's see. Yeah, I think Black people need to have a better message. Yelling at white people who don't know any better isn't going to help the cause. I explain things to conservative white people every day. Well, I mean, the vast majority of the movement is made up of white people. So if we're going to affect or impact the way the conservative movement reaches out to the Black community, a lot of that is going to be white conservatives who put that into action. So I think it is necessary to bring about a change in the mindset on the right. I mean, this mindset has been here since the 60s with Goldwater. He straight out said, we should never reach out to Black people. He got 6% of the Black vote. And even though he lost the election, his people were still in high places of government, those who supported him. So they followed what he said. So, I mean, we have to change things on the right to be able to make the right more attractive to Black people who vote for Democrats. Because right now, it's not like Black people love the Democrats. It's just that they don't see the Republicans as an alternative. We need to make the Republican Party to be a viable alternative, not just at the federal level, not just at the presidential level, but also in Congress, governorships, state legislatures, mayors, city councils, all of that. And we can't do that if we're constantly having this misunderstanding and this misperception of the Black community. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, just I explain things to them instead of yelling or rolling my eyes. I do struggle with the rolling my eyes part. I'll tell you that. Let's see. What else we got? What's up, Mickey? How you doing? Yeah, was raised middle class. That's how I was raised. So I don't fit that particular stereotype, I guess. Although I do fit the single mother stereotype. So, but yeah, I mean, you need people from different backgrounds who can speak to a certain amount of people. I mean, if you look at the Bible, what Paul said, I can't remember which book it was in, but he talks about how he has to be all things to all people. Now, this doesn't mean he was being fake. It just meant that he had to learn how to speak to the Roman rather than the Jew, or to speak to somebody in Rome differently than he would in Athens or Thessalonica or wherever he was going. Let's see. I think Will type conservatives need to stop taking every critique as bashing, and Carlton type of conservatives need to stop having only negative things to say. That is 100% right. Yeah, you're right. I think it would be a little bit easier if we were all a little less sensitive. I mean, and the only place where I'm really going to get sensitive about it is if I see that somebody is bashing the Black community. And they do. I mean, I'm just not going to do it. I don't like it when the left does it, so I'm not going to tolerate it from the right. I have to be consistent on that. But I think when it comes to other areas, I mean, there might be other areas where people aren't necessarily trying to be insulting. Like Shamika. Shamika was not trying to be insulting. I mean, that I don't think that's who she is. I don't know her like that personally, but from what I've seen, there's nothing there to suggest that. Let's see. Okay, now this is an interesting point. I want to address this. I still don't like that Carlton and Will analogy. I think Will-type conservatives don't realize how sensitive some of those Carltons are. We are very used to making fun of people and don't realize that. You know what? You're right about that. And I think that when we're talking about the Will and Carlton analogy, we need to make sure that we explain that this is not an insult. I understand that, because there was a time, and I don't think it's not as common now as it used to be. When I was a kid, and before I moved out to Rancho Cucamonga, I was living in various parts of LA, and I used to get teased a lot for how I talk, because I talk white. I mean, I sound like a white guy to them, and probably to other people too. I was more quiet when I was younger, and it's mostly because I couldn't fake talking the way I talk. I was very sensitive about it as a kid. So what you're saying is right. I've experienced that, and I've spoken to others who have as well. As I got older, it became less of an issue. Even when I moved out to Rancho Cucamonga, half of my friends were Black anyway. I had a lot of white friends, but I had my Black friends too. And and in high school, I used to hang out with a lot of Black people who would fit more of the Will type variety. Again, people who were being raised middle class, not necessarily in the hood, but they're more like Will. So I didn't get teased much then when I was in high school. And as I got older, people cared less. And I can't remember the last time somebody has ever like maliciously made fun of me about it. Like I get comments as far as like joking around, but I do think that there is a level of sensitivity, especially with people around my age. And I don't know how old you are. You're probably maybe around my age, but you're right. We do have to be sensitive to the idea that people will think that will imply that you're less Black if you don't talk a certain way. Or like, for instance, for me, I was really into rock music. I still am. Now, never mind the fact that a lot of what I listen to is actually Black music, but it's just not the normal hip hop stuff. I'm very picky about my hip hop, and I don't listen to it all the time, but I love to listen to old school. I was listening to the Gap Band yesterday, all that. That's more of my speed, because that's what I grew up with. But still, I mean, that is a thing in the Black community, and I won't go too much on that, because I can talk about that longer. But yeah, we can be a little bit more sensitive about that. I agree. Let's see. Mitt Romney and Jeff pushing the flour tortilla be an all wheat or spinach tortilla. Spinach tortillas aren't bad though. I like those. Let's keep it going. Yep, GOP are trash at messaging. It's been like that for a long time. You're right. Messaging in general, not even just of the Black community. I mean, they make their biggest mistakes with the Black community, but they're really bad with messaging, period. Let's see. Yeah, this is another part of the problem. Where is the majority of Black conservative ink in the Black churches, Black-owned businesses, HBCUs, and related organizations / media? Again, they're not there for that. Their audience is not Black people. I mean, if you look at Blexit, where do they hold most of their events? And who are the main people who attended those events? I mean, if they went to a Black neighborhood and tried to hold an event, nobody would come. Not because Black people aren't open to hearing something different. I mean, I've spoken with Black candidates running in cities like Chicago and Baltimore, and Black people, I mean, they weren't ready to vote for a Republican yet, but they were willing to listen and have the conversation. They weren't getting called coons and Uncle Toms and sellouts. They weren't getting called that. People are like, oh, you're a Republican. Okay. I don't see a lot of Republicans out here, which is part of the problem, but they're at least willing to hear, they were at least willing to hear them out. But you're right. I mean, you don't see these people talk to Black people a whole lot, whether it's online or in person. And with the platforms that they have, they should be able to. And I know that what I'm saying doesn't apply to all of them. Like Bryson, for instance, she mentioned that she talks to Black people in her community, and that's fine. I mean, I don't think she's doing it like other people are, but probably more than the others are. But the problem is that there's no engagement. You can't get somebody to vote for you if you won't even talk to them. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Well, it's up to people like you and the rest of the rank and file Republicans. I doubt the establishment will change anytime soon. No, they're not going to change at all. They've got to go. They will change when enough of them lose power. And I hate to say that, but it's true. Not just in government, but in the Republican Party, the conservative movement itself. They've got to go. I mean, these types power for decades, like I said, and they've used the exact same strategy over and over again. I was just telling Kira Davis this at CPAC. The plantation narrative has been around since the 60s, and it's morphed into something else over the past decades. But they've been using this strategy as far as the way they message to the Black community and the way they talk about the Black community. They've been doing it for 60 years, and nothing has changed. So maybe in those first 10 to 20 years, I could say, okay, maybe they were just clueless and didn't know what they were doing. But when you're coming up on 60 years, I'm sorry, at this point, you're doing it on purpose. And you know the impact that it's having. And because you only want a certain type of Black people on the right, and you only want a certain number of Black people on the right. So it's got to change. Let's see. Yeah, Jeff and Kira have been on Fox Soul. Yes, we have. Angela was on Breakfast Club. I mean, Angela is very active in her community from what I've seen. I mean, she does talk to Black people. I mean, on her social media, most of her audience is white because it's conservatives, but she talks to Black people too on Breakfast Club, and I'm sure in other areas as well. And I've had my experiences on Black media. I want to have more than what I do right now, but I mean, Fox Soul might be a way to get there. Okay, so let me go to the rest here. I'm going to spend too much time on comments, but we're going to go.
Sonny, is it too late? Is it too late?
Actually, I kind of want to reverse the sentiment for a second, because everybody is speaking like it's something that like we can do. And I know all of our strengths, understand. The first time I made it to the main stage here at CPAC, I was invited by Andrew Breitbart. CPAC didn't want me here. CPAC did not want me here. Andrew Breitbart wanted me here. So Andrew said, if Sonny doesn't introduce me, I'm not coming. That's how I got here the first time. This time, CPAC did not want me here. I am here because Maj wanted me here. Now, the two things that I got...
CPAC wants you here.
No. I
do y'all want Andrew? Y'all want... That's CPAC. That's CPAC. That is CPAC. That's CPAC.
But this is this is the thing. And of course, the two things that I carry from Andrew, and I try to make sure I do on Sonny's Corner, always, is when you have a light, you take that light and you shine it on other people. So shout out for being an Andrew representative. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
The other part is more voices. Always, always, always more voices. It's not restricted to just the voices that are here, but how can you open it up? So when I hear them say, and this, don't take no offense, but truth got to be told. We have to go and knock down the doors of Republicans. Do you know how many doors I've knocked down?
Right.
Do you know how many conservative doors I have knocked down?
So is it too late, or can we right the ship?
That is a question that this audience is going to have to answer. Because if you want the talking points, if you want the stereotypes, if you want the losing by 90%, right, for 60, 70, 80 years, if that is what you want, choose insanity and continue to do the same thing, expecting different results.
We got 1 minute. Rich, Adrian, I want y'all to both real quickly, briefly, sum it up. Tell me your perspective on how we can right this ship.
To Sonny's point, she's right. And when I say knocking down those doors, we need to knock them down together. I'm asking everybody here to help me knock down that door.
Right.
But number one, this is an agenda. This is politics. We all have an agenda. And I believe the agenda in America, this is America. The agenda is liberty, right? The Spanish word for liberty is libertad. This is a libertad agenda that we need to promote and continue to promote it and keep banging down doors.
100%. Adrian?
When Sonny was referencing as far as knocking down doors, she was talking about what Rich Valdez had talked about earlier in the clip. He talks about how it should be Latinos and also Black people that are banging on the door of the Republican Party. I think he may have meant to say like people like himself who are already conservative and vote Republicans. We need to be knocking those doors down to make sure that we're getting our voices heard in the GOP. And that's something that's always been a thing. I mean, when I've been reading about the history of the Republican Party and the Black vote, I'm seeing that even though the Republican Party walked away from the Black community, there were always elements in the Republican Party who were trying to get them to go back, like there are today. Like this isn't really a new thing. It's just you never really heard about them because the establishment wanted to reject them. But even after Goldwater, I mean, there were people fighting against this move to exclude Black voters, essentially. I mean, we talk about the Southern strategy, and no, the Southern strategy isn't what the left says it is, but there was a realignment that took place over a number of decades. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, the South used to vote Democrat, and now they vote Republican. So we know that something happened, right? So, but it wasn't the way the left said it was. I'll do a whole other video on that, but because both narratives are wrong. So I'll straighten that out. But what Sonny is saying is right, obviously. We need more voices here on the right. And one thing that she says, and I don't know if that's a hit or not, but one thing that Sonny said is, we can't say that we're about the individual if we're not going into the Black community and the Latino community, because those are individuals too. If you only focus your efforts on one race of people or one culture or one subset of Americans, you can't say that you're about the individual. You're only about certain individuals. The Democrats show that they're about individuals better than the Republican Party does. And they don't even mean it. They don't even, that's not even something, that's not even a value that they have. They don't value the individual like the conservative movement claims to do. So that's yet another thing that we need to change. And speaking of change, I have had this background up for far too long, brother. So I'm going to change it right now. Back to what it's supposed to be. There we go. Okay. So let me go on with this last part here.
I think we definitely have an opportunity to kind of right the ship. In addition to kind of piggyback on what Sonny said, I think we got to stick to our conservative values. A lot of times with Democrats, we see that shift in the goalposts, and they don't really stand by their principles. And a lot of times it doesn't happen on the right either. So let me give you an example. So we say you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But then when we talk about investing in, let's say, Greenwood Bank, or keeping money in Black-owned businesses so that Black dollar circulates within the Black community. A lot of times we get called racist.
That's racist.
This is true.
So so we have to make sure that we're standing by actual Republican values and conservative principles in our daily interactions with people. And ultimately, I think if we do that, the results will take care of themselves in the long run.
Sure. We got 13 seconds left, everybody. I want to.
That's Adrian Norman, and I hadn't heard of this guy before, but I started following him. Hopefully I can talk to him on the show, because he just made a very, very, very solid point right there. We need to stick to our principles when it comes to the Black community. Like you hear Sonny Johnson say, we need to apply our conservatism equally, which means that we apply it to Black people the same way we apply it to white people. So if the conservatives are always preaching personal responsibility, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, then they need to mean that shit. And right now, when it comes to Black people, they don't. Because like you said, if they want to invest in Greenwood, which is a bank that's being created that caters to a Black audience. Now, hear what I'm saying. It caters to a Black audience. It markets to a Black audience. This doesn't mean that white people can't use the bank if they want to. They're not going to turn away people based on race, but their target audience is Black and brown people. And when they first came out, I even wrote an article about it. And what did I get? Oh, that's racist. That's segregation. What if people wanted to set up just white-owned businesses? Yeah. Really made a good point there. No, you didn't. You're a dumbass. You're not thinking about this critically. You say Black people should do for themselves instead of relying on the government. And then when they do it, you want to criticize the way they do it. They're not excluding anybody. Nobody's being exclusive. And I'm sorry, white people don't need to set up white-only banks because they already have them. I mean, yes, you have minorities using banking, but it's mostly white people. White people aren't in a position to where they would need to band together like that, because most of the wealthy people in this country are white. So it's a ridiculous argument, and it's really just I think most white conservatives get it, and common sense will tell you, okay, yeah, it makes sense because of these laws. By the way, most of which were passed by Democrats. Black people are behind white people, and the government did this. So we need to recognize, if we're going to say we're anti-government, we need to be able to acknowledge that the government is wrong. We can't just say the government is wrong in every single way, shape, and form, except for the way they treat Black people. Like that, it doesn't work that way. The government is still doing things to hold the Black community down. And guess what? Once again, it's being done by Democrats. I'm not saying Republicans are innocent, but that's a different story. But most of it is done by Democrats, just by design, because most cities where Black people live are run by Democrats. It doesn't mean that every city that Democrats run are horrible, by the way. I mean, if you go to Atlanta, Democrats, surrounding areas, Democrats. But in the cities where Black people are doing the worst, those cities are not being run by Republicans. So the thing is that we have to understand is that we have to value when we see Black people doing conservative things to build up their community. Like when Nipsey Hussle, when he was murdered a couple years ago, I mean, you had Laura Ingraham mocking him just because he didn't like Trump, but that was the only thing. And that's another issue on the right too. Like, you can't just judge people by how they feel about Trump. That is the dumbest thing that I've ever. This is what I mean when I say #stop the stupid. But this was a stupid segment. She was mocking him because he didn't like Trump. This was an opportunity for conservatives to say, well, who is this man? Who is Nipsey Hussle? Oh, wait, he made a lot of money and built a STEM center for Black inner city children. Oh, wait, he bought businesses specifically so that he can employ Black people, thereby helping the unemployment rate in the Black community. Oh, we like that stuff. We like free enterprise. We like capitalism. So maybe it doesn't matter how he feels about Trump, or they want to bash Jay-Z because he was a drug dealer, which they don't care about that. But I mean, Jay-Z is a capitalist. I mean, if the Republican Party had their shit together, Jay-Z would probably be a Republican. I'm just going to say that right now. If the Republican Party was what it should be and had been that way for a while, I don't think that Jay-Z would throw in with Democrats like that. The problem is that the Republican Party does not apply its stated values equally. So, thoughts on the overall panel. I thought it was excellent. Everybody did an excellent job. Everybody on that stage rocked it. And they're just the time was the issue. This panel needed at least an hour, and I would even go so far as an hour and a half to really get into the meat of this stuff. Now, fortunately, they all have platforms so they can do this, but that was the prime opportunity to really educate that audience. And by the way, there were a lot of people in that room, like you saw, because they went on right before Trump. So everybody was in that room. Everybody was, all eyes were on them. If they would have been able to have at least an hour, they could have really dug into the issues that the right is having when it comes to getting more Black support. They were able to touch on it, but it was like, 30 minutes is that's like an appetizer, and expecting people to be full off of an appetizer. And yes, I know an hour and a half wouldn't be long enough either, but there could have been a springboard effect there. I mean, there could have been people who walked away having heard things that they hadn't before and really given them something to chew on. And I think they still did that, but it would have been so much better if they had more time. I mean, obviously that's nobody's fault. I mean, there's the people who set it up that way, but I'm hoping that there are more opportunities like that. And like I said at the beginning, I'm optimistic because the fact that they even allowed this to happen without a whole lot of fuss or a whole lot of criticism. I know the thing happened with young Pharaoh, but I'm not really going to talk about that because I don't want that situation to overshadow what happened on that stage. It was important. It was important for Black conservatives. It was important for the Republican Party. And hopefully, if this actually leads to action, it was important to the Black community as well. But that remains to be seen. We have to see what happens after this. I know a lot of the Black conservative ink types weren't very happy that this panel happened. They felt, well, some of it is fake outrage, definitely. But nobody was calling out anybody by name. Yeah, I mean, the people that they were referring to, in a sense, when they were talking about the wrong way to do it versus the right way to do it, yeah, they're talking about the people who have been doing it the wrong way. But again, it's not just Black conservative ink today. Again, like I said, that message is not their own. They didn't come up with a single word of that message. That message was given to them. And they were told, they weren't told in the way I'm saying it, but they were basically told, like, this is, you go out there and say this stuff and we will elevate you. And they may not have said it as directly as I did, but by how they promoted it, that was the thing. So we need more voices. I'm not saying their voices have to go away. I mean, that's for the consumer to decide if they want to listen to them or not. I just want more voices out there. Like Sunny was saying, we need more voices. Maj Toure needs more to be featured more in the conservative movement by conservative media. So does Sonny Johnson. So does Shamika. So does Angela. I mean, there are plenty of us out there that have something to say that will get conservatives to think differently. I just want a more productive messaging from the right. Like I said, we've got the policy, we've got the principles, they work, but we don't have the persuasion. And we need to get this party, this movement, out of this lily white mentality. And when I say lily white, I'm talking about the lily white movement. I'm not making a racial remark. You probably heard me talk about the lily white movement before, but we need to get out of that mentality, the Goldwater mentality that says, let's not talk to Black voters. We need to get out of that. And like I always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, they can't expect to win right when they first start, but just by having events like this to where a Black Democrat who maybe is maybe conservative or moderate, but votes Democrat because they don't like the Republican Party, when they see stuff like this, maybe they think, oh, well, maybe they're not all like so-and-so and such. Maybe there are Black faces over there that actually understand what we're going through and actually want to help and actually, like us. So the more we see that, the more that will get people questioning what they've always heard. So don't want to go on too much more on that. Like I said, I can go on with this forever, but let's go back to the chat here. Let's see. All right, I didn't even know they had Black people speaking at CPAC. This makes a world of difference. Yeah, they've had Black people speak at CPAC before. That they normally had the more Black conservative ink types speaking at CPAC. But again, their audience is white conservatives. They're not really talking to the Black community. Most of them aren't. And here's another important point that you made. I just can't support Trump. I refuse to, and Republicans love him. Honestly, I don't care whether you like Trump or not. And that's how it should be. If you have the principles down, if you like the principles, then, I mean, yeah, you may not like Trump, but that's okay. And yeah, a lot of Republicans love him. He has his base. But honestly, a lot of people that voted for him didn't vote for him because they love him. They just voted for him because they thought Biden would be worse. I'm one of those people. I don't hate Trump. I don't love him. He's a politician to me. I feel the same way about Biden. Let's see. Yeah, more voices, better perspective, definitely. Let's go here. Only the real liberty-minded Republicans can get the black vote, i.e. Rand Paul, Thomas Massie. The rest of the GOP politicians don't care about people in the urban areas. Yes. You know, I've always said, I mean, if the Libertarian Party weren't a joke, I mean, if they actually took things seriously, which I know that there are people in the Libertarian movement who are doing a lot of what people like me are doing, trying to change it around. But the Libertarian Party, if they had their stuff together, they could make more inroads in the black community. Moss Trey is a libertarian himself. I mean, he ran as a libertarian. But yeah, Rand Paul actually speaks at historically black colleges, knowing that these people won't agree with everything he says. He does it anyway. And it will be the more liberty-minded people. Like I said, the establishment has no interest in black votes. I don't care what they say. I mean, Ronna McDaniel put that tweet out last week or the week before saying, oh, we're going to dedicate $2 million of the billions and billions and billions that we got to, you know, build some centers in some colleges, so to build some offices in cities where black people are. One, I don't believe you. Two, even if you do, it's going to have like one person in there. You're not going to actually do any real outreach. Three, if I'm wrong, I will eat that crow. I will put some hot sauce on crow and I will eat that crow gladly. But I'm not wrong. That's the problem. I'm right about what I'm saying. You're not taking the black community seriously. So, and that is what the establishment has been doing for decades. They put forth this front and they put forth black faces to talk about the black community to create that illusion that they actually want to get black votes. Let's keep going here. Yeah, what Adrian points out here is spot on. This hypocrisy when it comes to black-owned businesses. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if I say something like, I want to support a black business, well, why don't you just want to support American business? No, you don't have that attitude when it comes to black-on-black crime, like I said. You don't have that issue when it comes to abortion and the abortion rate in the black community. Have that same energy. If I'm saying, hey, I want to support a black-owned business so that more black people will have jobs and income, and that can multiply, thereby getting rid of the need for abortion. You see where I'm going? All these conservative principles that we say we want. Well, yeah, I will support a black-owned business if I get the opportunity. And that's something, yeah, that's actually a good topic I want to talk about another time too, because I had some good conversations about that over the past weekend. Yeah, Mortal Thinker, I agree. If white people want to see blacks excel in America, help where you can, but then get out of the way so that blacks can take the lead on things that affect their communities. It's a lot like what Frederick Douglass said, don't meddle with us. Your meddling with us has already done the mischief with us. So yeah, but the thing is, when you have Democrat mayors and city councils, they don't follow that principle. Like they want to do it for them, thereby keeping them in the same conditions. I'm not saying that that's the only factor. There's more to it. And again, Republicans aren't innocent on this either. War on drugs, stuff like that. I mean, we've got even more examples. But right now, as it is, Democrats are in control of those communities and they know they have no competition, so they can do whatever the hell they want because nobody's ever going to try to unseat them. So that is an issue, but we can't expect it from Democrats. It's got to be Republicans who get in there and compete and show that they actually want black votes. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, the Republicans are pro-government when it suits them, or when it doesn't affect them. Because you saw how they were crying about, you know, not being able to play in the park and the police get arresting people and stuff like that. I don't disagree with them, but where were you when Bloomberg was putting in stop and frisk and only catching like 1% of the people, or whatever the percentage was, a very small percentage of people who were actually carrying something that they weren't supposed to be carrying? In a lot of those cases, they were drugs, which, in my opinion, you shouldn't be thrown in a cage over drugs. So apply a conservatism equally, just like Sonny Johnson says. Let's see. Yeah, the loudest people have a huge base. Mark Dice, Shapiro, Matt Walsh types. They can have their platform. I just want more voices. I want more platforms out there to be able to reach the audience, and we can compete on the battlefield of ideas. And our ideas will win because ours are better and they're based on actual facts and not stereotypes. Let's see. You have to go to where the people are. You cannot complain. Republicans never win in blue cities if they never show up. Exactly. I want to address this. This is coming from someone that was brought into conservatism from Candace Owens. And before he said, that is the strength of conservatism, then you posted this. So that's an interesting point. Now, am I saying that that Candace Owens has not persuaded any Black person to come to the right? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it would be a hell of a lot more if she wasn't busy bashing Black people all the time. It would be a lot more if she actually showed that she likes Black people. Again, she might like Black people. I can't read her mind, but she doesn't show it. And the fact is, most Black people can't stand her. They know who she is, so she's got the name recognition, but 98, 99% of Black people, they're not going to follow her. And they shouldn't. Why would they? I mean, if somebody's going to speak to you a certain way, then yeah, conservatism may be good, but are you really going to apply that in a way that benefits me if you hold me in contempt? Let's see. Can a Carlton Banks Republican have a Black agenda? Yes. Carlton is pro-Black. Yes, they can. Yes. If I were a politician, I would have a pro-Black agenda. Don't get excited. I'm not running for office. And then last one, I think this will be my last one. Do you see a shift in numbers of the older generation of Republicans to a younger generation? Because I think the power and the potential to do this is in the younger generation. Yep, you're right. At the risk of offending boomers, which I'm not trying to do, but when it comes to the Black community, the conservative movement has a very boomer con mindset that needs to go away. The boomer con mindset are the ones that like the plantation narrative, that like to talk about Black people loving free stuff and being thugs and yada, yada, yada. When as that's fading out and as a younger generation is coming in, I'm seeing that younger people are more open to hearing things about the Black community that Fox News won't tell them. So I think that we are moving in a good direction. And by the way, even though I say boomer con mindset, a lot of the people that I get emails from that I talk to saying that they changed their minds on certain things, or people who say that they never really liked the way the Republican Party ignored Black people to begin with, a lot of them are boomers. So it's not all of them, but there is that mindset, and that's where it comes from. So yeah, I mean, as time goes on, we are going to win this battle. My concern is that with the younger generation, the Republican Party doesn't do a very good job of reaching out to younger voters. So a lot of the younger people who are coming up, who would be more open to what we're saying and applying conservatism in a different way, I don't know if the conservative movement will have them, because just like they don't take getting Black votes seriously, they do the same thing with the youth vote. Shout out to Magdalene Rose. Check out her channel. I've interviewed her myself. She's interviewed me before. And we talk quite a bit, and we talk about, the differences and the similarities in how the conservative movement relates to Black voters versus young voters in general. But yeah, check out her channel. The way you spell her name is Mahgdalen, last name Rose, like the flower. Check her out and follow her on Twitter if you haven't already. She is a very sharp young lady, and she is going to be very important going forward. I really see that in her. But I mean, the Republican Party is going through some stuff right now. The conservative movement is going through some stuff right now. Trump is going to play a part in that, but it's not all Trump. Like, this was a long time coming. Trump is a symptom of this. So Trump is going to play a part, but this civil war is on, and either the establishment will remain dominant, or the non-establishment type people will oust them. The establishment will never go away completely, but they just need to not be in control. That's the outcome I'm hoping for. And this will literally determine the soul of the party and the future of the conservative movement. And I'll tell you right now, This is how important this is. If we can't get the conservative movement and the Republican Party to start engaging genuinely, authentically, and seriously with Black and brown voters, America will become a socialist nation, because the conservative movement will become obsolete, because it will still want to focus just on white voters, and that population is decreasing while minority populations are increasing. And it's only going to take a few decades. We're not talking like 50, 60, 70 years, 20, 30, maybe 40 from all the projections. That is why I'm so serious about this. And that's why a lot of us are, because this could very well change the direction that America goes in. So just wanted to leave you guys with that. I appreciate you to being here. Every time I do this, I get more people watching live, and I get more people watching the replays. Please share this. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, but definitely share this video with all of your friends. And like I said, if you want to support my work, you can do so here, or there's some other links in the show notes. Sign up for my locals.com community to get exclusive content that's behind the paywall. Again, only $5 a month. That's it. No contract, no nothing like that. You can cancel whenever you want, but you won't want to cancel because you're going to love what I come up with for you guys. So until next time, have a great night.